This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Welcome back to my review of every Pokemon anime series. In this video, we're going over the 4th anime series, Pokemon Best Wishes, also known as Pokemon Black and White. Now if you know me, then you'll know that my opinion of this series is with the majority of the fan base. I'm not the biggest fan of Black and White. It's often regarded as the absolute worst Pokemon series, and it's what made many fans fall off after Diamond and Pearl. But after rewatching every single episode, what do I now think? Does this series truly deserve the hate it gets? Or is it, dare I say, a good series? It's time to find out. I am definitely gonna need some help tackling this one, so joining me are the right guys for the job, the Insane Game Freak and Ozymitsu.
Yo, what's up guys, the Insane Game Freak here.
Hello everyone, my name's Ozymitsu.
Now unlike past reviews, we're gonna be doing things a bit differently this time. Instead of just separating all of the good and bad elements of the series, we're gonna be going over everything for each individual topic we have for you today. Because ironically, or unironically enough, this is a series to teach me that things are not always black and white. Yeah, I know that was bad. So without further ado, let's begin with our retrospective review of Pokemon Black and White. The first thing we're going to tackle about this series is the infamous soft reboot. As many people know by now, Generation 5 was meant to be a soft reboot for the Pokemon franchise. This was also extended to the anime. Now the good thing about the soft reboot is the fact that this really makes it feel like a new beginning for the Pokemon anime. Because there's no direct transition from the last series and everything is brand new here, Black and White is the series that has the most refreshing start out of any other. It most accurately captures the feeling of playing a new Pokemon game for the first time, and I really like that. It's the perfect new starting point for any fan, especially for new ones as it's not really connected to any of the previous series, at least during the beginning. Now although this soft reboot is great if you're a new fan, it does create some problems for the longer term fans. Because they wanted this to be a new beginning, Ash is reset to the age of 10 and seemingly loses all of the experience he's gained over the past 4 generations. Now this, I hate. When it comes to everyone's favorite battle, Ash vs Trip, I'll at least let it slide because Pikachu got Zekrom nerfed, but there are other instances in the series where these Ash Ketchum rookie moments feel like a complete disrespect to his character. I get why they did it, they wanted to reintroduce all the Pokemon training mechanics like catching and battling, but the problem with this is that it makes Ash extremely inconsistent. On the bright side, this is only really a thing during the first season, as he does get some of his old Ash Ketchum swag back by like the 5th gym. Another thing to note about the soft reboot is the fact that because Gen 5 tried to be like the new Gen 1, a lot of Black and White structure heavily mimics the Kanto portion of the anime. Ash is a rookie trainer again, he has all 3 starters, he's catching more than 6 Pokemon, he's traveling with 2 gym leaders from the games, a sassy tomboy and a guy who cooks, he has an embarrassing league loss, and then he ends things off with an anime exclusive island arc. Now although at face value it might seem like this is just a Kanto rehash, surprisingly, this series does a lot of things better. It's almost like Black and White was what Kanto was supposed to be. As the review goes on, we'll touch more on these specific aspects, but for now, how about we move on to Ash's new team? Alright, so the Unova team was definitely interesting. It's often criticized as the worst of all of Ash's teams, but is that really true? This is the series where Ash decided to have a rotation of Pokemon instead of the standard 6. It's a cool concept, but honestly, it wasn't executed properly in my opinion. The problem is that for the most part, Ash sticks to Pikachu, Oshawott, Snivy, and Pignite, so he's only really rotating the last 2 slots. Because of this, like the original series, Ash's team is a bit unbalanced. I will admit it was handled better than the original series, but not by much. Because most of the spotlight is on the Unova starters, they overshadow Pokemon like Leavanny and Palpitoad that have similar typings. Like, what was the point of catching them? Then there's Pokemon like Boldore and Crocodile that get a fraction of the screen time they truly deserve. This is why the fandom believes that Ash's Unova Pokemon suck. They're barely present, so they barely have memorable moments. But you know what? That's why we're gonna go over each Pokemon individually to give them each the right amount of attention. Let's go in order of capture, starting with... Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Ugh. Look, I wanna be fair, I really do, but I still think Unfezant sucks. I can't do this. I don't wanna do this.
Do you mind if I take this one?
Oh, thank God. Yes, please.
You know, I understand why Unfezant is so unpopular. It didn't really stand out from Ash's other Pokemon, but it had its moments, particularly in the battle against Skylar. She was adamant that premeditating battle results based on type matchups was how you should run a gym, and Silent had failed to get through to her, so Ash owed it to himself and Silent to convince Skylar the error of her ways. It was Unfezant's sheer determination which achieved that. The way it evolved at such a crucial part of the battle and emerged victorious, despite Skylar's prediction, it may not have been Ash's most iconic Pokemon, but it certainly tries its hardest to make Ash proud with the little screen time it did have. Oshawott captured the hearts of all Pokemon fans in its debut. It was adorable. I loved how it would often come out of its Pokeball all confident, realising the opponent wasn't someone he could take on, and then urges another one of Ash's Pokemon to take his place. He had such hilarious moments, but wasn't a one-trick pony by any standards. Oshawott showed time and time again it was a competent battler and really came out of its shell whilst delivering some high quality battles. He was a full package and you couldn't possibly ask for more.
Time for Pignite. Now sure, it has an interesting backstory with it being abandoned by a shitty trainer, and it even gets a solid conclusion to that arc and just solid development overall. But the problem is that it's basically just a rehash of the abandoned Firestarter plotline. So Pignite doesn't feel all that special to be honest, especially since we just finished the storyline with Infernape.
The queen has arrived. Ash seems to usually get a good roll with grass types, excluding that one incident with the turtle. Snivy is so sassy and I love it. She's the responsible mon in the group akin to Bulbasaur and Kanto. I love how her interactions can range from support a big sis, like with Tepig dealing with his old trainer, to you ain't slick, like seeing through Amoga's attract shenanigans. Speaking of attract, Snivy was a solid battler with an effective charm and kill 'em strategy.
Next is Scraggy, and I actually think it was a pretty cool mon. I loved his little brotherly rivalry with Iris's Axew, and it made sense since they were both kinda the babies of the group. I think what I like most about Scraggy is how little by little we'd see him grow into a strong battler. Ash would constantly train it against Axew, and it even eventually became strong enough to participate in real matches like during the Club's Explosion. Just a very satisfying development overall.
The good times with grass types just keep rolling. Let's be real, when Ash caught Sawada early on, we didn't expect his Levanny to get this good. Considering he had already had a Snivy at this point, I didn't expect Sawada to get a lot of screen time. I was so happy to be wrong though. He beat two of Berg's Pokemon and evolved in the same gym match, beat Coughing in his match against Roxy, and almost took out Sock in the best fight of the Unova League. Levanny is such a trooper and refuses to back down, and I love that never give up type of attitude.
Next up, the god that is Palpitoad. Honestly, I unironically love Palpitoad and thought, in Elisa's own words, it was a tough and resilient Pokemon. The fact Palpitoad took on Elisa's Zebstrika, the very same Pokemon that took out all of Bianca's Pokemon, really showcased how competent it was when it put its mind to it. What I really liked about Palpitoad was that unlike some of Ash's other Pokemon, it appeared to share Ash's love for Pokemon battles, which is why they complemented each other really well. Unfortunately, Palpitoad has one of the fewest appearances out of all of Ash's Pokemon, so it didn't really have many opportunities to leave a lasting impression.
Boldore was definitely another random type of capture. It isn't really a bad Pokemon, but it's one that didn't really get enough screen time either and was only really relevant for like 3 battles. It did have a pretty awesome moment though, when it evolved against Clay's Excadrill and even won the battle. It deserved way more moments like this.
This is his ace. Sindao has been around very early on in Best Wishes and definitely was carrying around that Squirtle energy. Crocodile has become one of my favorite mons due to Ashes from this series. He started out as such a sassy Sandow and became an absolute monster. Ash didn't even catch him until he was a Crocorock, and it evolved into a Crocodile while fighting a mother... while fighting Iris's Dragonite, and he won. Having such a variety of moves from Stone Edge to Aerial Ace and having a full complete arc, he was definitely Ash's star player.
Now that we're done with Ash, let's talk about Iris. Whilst there are some negative points about her character, it cannot be denied Iris has some great qualities as well. Iris gets a lot of stick for her "you're such a kid" catchphrase when directed at Ash, but honestly I saw this coming from a good place. Ash received positive reinforcement from Silent whenever he would make a mistake and adopted a more gentle approach when trying to help Ash. Because of this, Iris adopted the tough love approach. She didn't want to baby Ash to the point he wouldn't learn from his mistakes. Think of it as the good cop, bad cop routine. Iris exemplified how much she cares for Ash throughout the series. This was particularly prominent in the episode Rocking the Burbank Gym. The episode put a lot of emphasis on how much Ash struggled against Roxy. When he was down to his 6th and final Pokemon Pikachu, it was Iris's idea to dress up in eccentric clothing and give Ash the biggest cheer to try and drown out the cheers of Roxy's fans. You could really see how much she wanted Ash to succeed, and to argue that Iris was there just to give him a bad time, in my view, is a bit of a misguided opinion. When you look beneath the surface, you'll notice she wasn't this annoying hypocritical character she has been painted as. She was also shown to be a very competent trainer. This was portrayed in the club battle arc. It went so well for Iris that her Axew lends Outrage to defeat Luke's Golett. And who can forget the final round of the club battle where Iris went up against Ash and defeated him with her Excadrill. It certainly can't be argued she was carried by her Dragonite, as some would suggest. Moving on to Iris's goals throughout the series. She wanted to become a Dragon Master, and the series focuses on this in multiple ways. One of the biggest is when Axew takes on Cynthia's Garchomp. The fact Axew put up a good fight was impressive, and even Cynthia complimented Iris on how well she raised Axew. Another point in the series when Iris's goals were the focal point is when she returns to the Village of Dragons. We are given confirmation of how well Iris is doing when the village elder provides a positive evaluation of Iris and Axew's progress. She later caught the attention of Drayden when she was able to calm down a newly evolved Hydreigon. Iris wanted to showcase her skills as a Dragon Master and battled Drayden. Although Iris loses against him, finally seeing her Dragonite obey her shows a lot of growth. And the fact that Drayden recognises this in Iris and even sees her as the next Opelucid gym leader was massive, because he was portrayed as incredibly perceptive and sees the potential in a trainer and their Pokemon.
Now let's talk about the negative aspects of Iris. The first and most obvious one being the fact that she likes to give Ash crap a lot of the time. Most of her hate literally just comes from this, and even I will admit that it's a bit exaggerated. But to be fair, it's pretty damn annoying as well. Ozzy did bring up some great points that defend this, but the most common defense from Iris fans is the argument that, hey, Misty did the same to Ash, but nobody hates her. But the difference here is the fact that Ash was a rookie back then, while Misty was a gym leader, so her acting that way is a bit justified. Iris, on the other hand, really isn't. This is an Ash that literally took down legendaries in the previous series, so having a character undermine him the way she did just rubs people the wrong way. It's ironic too, because by episode 9 we find out that her Axew was a weak ass baby and has an Excadrill that won't listen to her. So I really don't get why she insisted on acting this way when it's pretty clear that Ash is a better trainer compared to her. Luckily, this is only really a problem in the very beginning, as she does chill out as the series progresses. Except for that one stupid argument episode. The major problem with Iris that tends to be overlooked, however, is her weird development. Now don't get me wrong, I love her Excadrill and Emolga, but why does she have them? For someone who wants to be a quote-unquote Dragon Master, those are some random-ass captures. You'd think she'd actually catch Dragon types, but the series takes forever to give her another one besides Axew. What makes it even more annoying is the fact that Iris has some amazing episodes with Pokemon like Druddigon, Dino, and even a Hydreigon, but they don't give it to her when those would have been perfect moments to do so. They always belong to other trainers for some reason, which is stupid. And then when they finally do decide to give Iris a Dragonite, it feels extremely forced. Almost like the writers forgot to give Iris her own Dragon type, so they just threw a fully evolved one in the second half of the series to make up for that. Like, yeah, it was cool, but also contradictory, cause what the heck was the point of Dragonite agreeing to join Iris if it was just gonna be disobedient right away? Like I said, Iris's development was weird. If they had just established her goal from the beginning and actually gave her more Dragon-type Pokemon throughout the series, maybe she would have been a lot more respected.
Now to talk about who I deem as the best male companion in the series. As he always says, it's tasting time! Now at first glance, Silent is very similar to other male companions. Being a gym leader turned traveling companion, you wonder why I rate him so highly. Simple. Consistency. Silent maintained the strong mind of a gym leader and had the skill to back it up. He's the only gym leader in the series to beat Ash's rival before Ash did. Silent has incredible variety in his comedic sequences. He's a connoisseur of the arts, which leads to a lot of comedic moments of him reacting and indulging into the things he loves. From movies to trains, Silent loves it all and happily plays into it, much to the ire of Iris sometimes. His relationship with Iris is something to be enjoyed, but I recognize as a bit underutilized. Silent represents logic and truth, whereas Iris represents ideals and spirituality. This early on led to great moments such as the museum episode right before Ash's gym match with Lenora, where the museum was haunted. Iris very much believes in the ghost and supernatural, whereas Silent is quick to brush it off, with it having some sort of logical explanation. This dynamic led to the trio having more interesting dialogue. I do want to circle back to Silent's battling skills though, because he completely outclasses his contemporaries in this category. Unlike Brock or Clement, Silent showed why he was a gym leader in spades. Silent has amazing analysis of his opponents and was quick to praise him if he deemed the marriage of trainer and Pokemon complete. Similar to Ash, he would also win fights with clever strategy even with bad type matchups. Unfortunately, even with all the praise I'm giving him, he still has issues. For one, the lore behind a Pokemon connoisseur is scarce at best and was never elaborated on further. We know that the highest class was S-ranked and that Silent was A-ranked, but we never met an S-ranked connoisseur or even learned the process to rise in the ranks. Silent did get a rival in the form of Burgundy, but she left much to be desired as she was never a match for Silent and never really improved. Silent also has some weird unanswered plots that were never revisited, like his fear of Purloin for example. Finally, his focus in the anime in the latter half drops off a cliff. Even with all these issues and others I don't have time to discuss, I still love this train-loving, crazy strong, gym-leading connoisseur.
Now that we've gotten the main characters out of the way, let's talk about the pacing of this series. When it comes to the main journey of Ash battling his way into the Unova League, I think this series handled it pretty well. This is one of the benefits of imitating Kanto, cause that portion of the original series had really good pacing. Instead of stretching out Ash's gym challenge throughout 3 to 4 years like the average series, Black and White keeps the main journey at 108 episodes. Because of this, the pacing between gym battles is a lot shorter, which keeps the filler to a minimum. The worst gap is between the 3rd and 4th gym, with about 25 episodes in between, which is pretty bad, but after that, things pick up quickly, with there being sometimes an average of 6 to 7 episodes between gym battles. That's insane. This kept the series extremely engaging, and we didn't really have to wait that long for the next important battle. It also helps that for the most part, the gym battles were pretty good. Aside from the first one, which was alright I guess, and the atrocity that was Elisa's gym battle, the rest are fun to watch. Let's go through the highlights. The battle against Lenora, where we saw him train and teach his Pokemon new moves that ended up paying off. Ash vs Berg, where Sewaddle evolved into Swadloon. Ash vs Clay, my personal favorite Unova gym battle, where Clay gets pissed off at Ash for using a track, so he evolves his Roggenrola and takes him down like a man. Ash vs Skyla, where, I'll admit, Unpheasant was pretty cool there. Ash vs Bryson, where Crocodile finally got time to shine with that awesome mid-air Stone Edge catch. And finally, Ash vs Roxy, where she was surprisingly tougher than expected, but Ash still manages to come out on top. Now what makes the Unova journey even better is that the episodes between gyms weren't even that bad either. Unlike Kanto, Unova actually makes good use of Ash's companions. Throughout the series, we get multiple episodes dedicated to Iris and Silent's development. Stack that on top of Ash dedicated episodes, rival episodes, companion rival episodes, tournament arcs, and even Team Rocket arcs, and you've got yourself a pretty interesting region. We even had an arc dedicated to Dawn's return where she stayed for a good 8 episodes. That was great. Honestly, the Unova journey wasn't that bad, all things considered. It's once we get to the Unova League where things start to go downhill. But before we get to that, how about we talk more about how this series handled the rivals, starting with Trip. Now Trip, I get what they were going for. He's basically the anime's version of Charon, but for some reason they also wanted to make him the new Paul. The problem, however, is that this is literally right after Diamond and Pearl, so Trip comes off as a cheap knockoff version. In our opinion, this was a failed rivalry because of how forced this felt. The anime wanted to try so hard to replicate Paul by constantly having Trip shit talk Ash and constantly beat him, but this makes no sense whatsoever because Trip was a beginner. We meet him when he's first starting out his journey, yet the anime wants to convince us that he's better than Ash? It also doesn't help that throughout the series, he's getting his ass handed to by other trainers like Silent and even Bianca, yet Ash couldn't beat him? That's just bad writing, and it makes Ash look like a weak trainer when he's really not. We see him getting good wins. When the anime stops forcing the Paul side of Trip, however, and focuses more on the Charon side, I think he's actually a lot better. Like we learn about his backstory with Alder and how he wants to beat him, that stuff is interesting. Unfortunately, we don't get enough of that. And finally, after all this buildup about how strong Trip is, they make him face Ash in the very first round of the Unova League so that he can lose to him early on. Pretty shitty treatment for Ash's main rival of the series. It's almost like the writers just kinda gave up on him in the end. Luckily, Black and White had a whole slew of other rivals to make up for that.
As Zach mentioned, Black and White really did have a lot of rivals. When I first watched the series, it was kind of hard to keep up with it, especially when they'd go AWOL for so long and then return in some filler episodes. Although I like the majority of the rivals on an individual basis, I do feel at times they were just added for the sake of slapping in some rivals in the series. I'll only go over the main rivals because some of the other characters classified as rivals such as Seamus and Luke simply aren't worth covering. Let's start with Bianca. What an absolute gem. She was clumsy, hyperactive, but so sweet. I actually really enjoyed her running gag with Ash where she'd bump into him and he'd fall into a body of water of some kind. I think the series treated Bianca as a half comic relief character but also wanted to portray she wasn't all sunshine and rainbows as seen with her relationship with her father. It also can't be forgotten she had some great wins under her belt, for example beating both Trip and Georgia in the club's Flosion arc. Moving on to Stefan. Stefan was definitely one of the more likeable rivals. I really enjoyed the running gag with the cast mispronouncing his name, but I also found it really sweet that his name was pronounced correctly towards the end. It really felt like he was finally part of the gang. He was always there during the various tournament arcs, and it was nice that he had a friendly rivalry with Ash, because it made them both want to work harder and become better trainers. It was so wholesome. Ah, Burgundy. Burgundy was a Pokemon connoisseur and a self-proclaimed rival to Silent. Although I really like the fact that Silent had a rival, I do feel Burgundy was there purely for the sake of comedy. She did add a lot of entertainment value to the episodes she did appear in though, like in the episode Clash of the Connoisseurs, and she also had a hilarious dynamic with Georgia whenever they got to interact with each other during the tournament arcs. Dragon Buster Georgia. Now Georgia, she was Iris's rival, and I felt the writers tried to give Iris's Dragon Master goal more substance by making her have a bit of friction with Dragon Buster Georgia, who specialised in ice types. It's great to see Georgia gain some actual respect for Iris and encourages her to become a Dragon Master because she expects her rivals to be strong. However, it's unfortunate that this rivalry doesn't get proper closure, since Georgia's final battle ends in a loss against Iris's Dragonite when it was still disobedient. Then there's Cameron. He's like the Univern regional variant of Barry, very energetic. I couldn't really gauge whether they wanted Cameron to be portrayed as a strong rival or if it was just for comic relief, because they would incessantly show him being forgetful. For example, he didn't know you needed 8 badges for the league, and he didn't bring a full team of 6 against Ash because he forgot. The fact he beat Ash in the league really hurt because Cameron felt like he was added just for the sake of giving Ash another rival, but it didn't feel purposeful at all. And finally, Virgil, another rival which was added far too late in the series. And it's not even the fact he was added too late in the series, but his debut and the way he won the league felt really rushed. He doesn't even get to battle Ash. Don't get me wrong, as a standalone character, I actually really like Virgil, but from a continuity perspective and the role he played in the series, not so much.
Now, let's talk about where the rivals were most relevant. Best Wishes decided to add some smaller tournament arcs in between the main plot. These are known as the Don George Battle Club tournaments, and these were great. Since Best Wishes had one of the larger casts, these arcs allowed everyone to get into the spotlight. We got to see Ash and company battle against other trainers, many of which were their various rivals. And even background characters would appear in the tournaments and even the league. Since they weren't a part of the main plot, these tournaments had an air of unpredictability to them, unlike a gym match where you knew Ash would eventually win. Anyone could win these tournaments, which made it genuinely exciting to see who would make it to the next round. On top of that, they would mix up the matchups where we would get to see battles we normally never see, like Ash versus Burgundy, Silent versus Trip, or even Iris versus Stefan, or is it Stefan? Whatever. It was always a free-for-all where anyone could get it. These arcs are also where some characters shine, like Burgundy and Langley. Even side characters like Luke made it in to join in on the fun. Just because these were side arcs doesn't mean they skipped out on the animation or development either. Remember, the first tournament took a little bit after Langley was first introduced, and Excadrill started listening to Iris again, which is who she used to beat Ash with, solidifying her growth as a character. Funnily enough, Ash ended up beating Langley in the very same tournament, which showed the unpredictability of the fights. Some of these fights look amazing, and since Ash had more than 6 Pokemon in this region, the tournaments allowed him to show off more of his team. Remember, Palpito got one of its only wins in these arcs.
Okay, time for the final and most important tournament arc, the Unova League. Yeah, it wasn't great, we all know this. Now it's not complete trash as it does have its moments. For instance, Ash and Stefan's battle was actually really good. Also, Ash finally defeats Trip here in the first round, and it's a one-on-one. Well, at least Ash vs Cameron was fun, until his Riolu evolved into Lucario. Okay, at least there was Ash vs Virgil. Man, was that awesome. Okay, I'm not gonna sit here and say that the Unova League can't be enjoyed, because it can, but it just makes so many weird and questionable choices that not only make it the weakest link in terms of other leagues, but even the weakest link compared to other tournament arcs this series had to offer. It's not even the fact that Ash vs Trip was in the first round, cause that was alright, but it's the fact that Ash lost to an idiot that brought 5 Pokemon to a full battle. Not only does it undermine his skill level, but it makes his team look weak as fuck. Then there's the fact that Virgil was introduced to win the league, even though Ash doesn't even get to face him. Like, what was the point? And don't even get me started on that Axew filler. Instead of using that extra episode for a better conclusion between Ash and Trip's rivalry, or even giving us a battle between Ash and Virgil, they instead give us an episode about Axew getting lost. Oh my f***ing god. On the bright side, this isn't the end of Black and White, as there's still more the series has to offer after this. But it's a shame that Ash's main goal of the series was treated so poorly. Especially when you consider the fact that the other tournament arcs in this series were handled a lot better. Ironic, isn't it? And now, before we talk about the events that take place after the league, let's first talk about everyone's favorite trio.
Let's do it. Team Rocket this go around was completely overhauled. The goofiness was completely gone and they were played straight. Team Rocket was used sparingly, and even when they were used, it was for arcs or setups for said arcs. This is one of the most controversial things about Best Wishes, as the reaction to Serious Team Rocket was met with very harsh and immediate criticism. Even in Japan, the fans weren't happy, nor were the voice actors, and I can see why. Jesse James and Meowth have been around since the beginning, and this sudden shift came out of nowhere with no proper transition. To top it off, the original special for Team Rocket vs Team Plasma was interrupted due to a natural disaster, and it never aired to this day. Most also agree it probably changed the course of the anime moving forward as well. All that being said though, I love this iteration of Team Rocket. The biggest issue I've had with the trio up until this point is that they would be constantly used to provide comedy, force development for the heroes and their Pokemon, or have the occasional heartfelt episode. The problem with this is that they never fully committed to being good or evil, and we got this annoying in-between in every region. Jessie always had the most screen time, especially in the later seasons, by being included in contests, but that led to very little for her as a character, and James and Meowth became even more relevant than they already were. The reason why I enjoyed the Best Wishes version of them so much is that they were focused, and only used when they needed instead of being used in every episode. This meant Ash and company could develop outside of Team Rocket instead of forcing it through their antics. This also meant that I could look forward to seeing them because they were now part of larger scale arcs, and when you did see them, it was set up for the next arc. Speaking of arcs, these are the best Team Rocket arcs, period. Giovanni was in the forefront again, especially in Operation Tempest, and was evil as ever. The writing was tighter for him than it's ever been. I understand that the fan and voice actor outcry is what led to them switching back in the latter half of the series, but I will always appreciate the time that they were serious and weren't shoehorned into every single episode.
Time for episode N, and all I've got to say is poor N. Whilst I thought he was a fantastic character and played a fantastic role in the series, even he on his own couldn't save the mess of Team Plasma in the anime. Now of course we know that the original plan for Team Plasma was cancelled due to some unforeseen circumstances, but still, the anime had more than enough time to come up with a better story for them. I mean, look at Team Rocket. Their original plan went down the drain along with Team Plasma's, yet they were still able to deliver a satisfying arc. As far as Team Plasma's involvement in the anime is concerned, it seems super rushed and disjointed. I'm a massive black and white anime fanatic, and even I thought the episodes with them were really boring. Team Plasma seek to control Pokemon, making them go on a rampage with an EM wave generator. Then Ghetsis uses Colress's Pokemon control device to take control of Reshiram, but then Pikachu was able to fight back against its controllers, yada yada yada, and destroy the control machine. This miraculously foiled Ghetsis' plan, and they were subsequently arrested. The whole plot was just too simplistic and felt like it was slapped in the series for the sake of it. And sure, it was cool to see Charizard come back here, but he doesn't really contribute that much to the arc, or the rest of the series for that matter. He was purely there for fan service. In my opinion, N legitimately saved this arc from being a complete dumpster fire. I loved how he was initially at odds with Ash's philosophy. He then recognises that contrary to his original opinion, they are trainers such as Ash, Iris and Silent who genuinely care for their Pokemon as friends. N's struggle was just seeing such a divide in this world. Towards the end of his arc, N recognises that while some people do treat Pokemon harshly, there are some who treat Pokemon as family. N then adopts the belief that Pokemon and people can be partners rather than master and servant, complementing the powerful bond Ash and Pikachu showed him.
Now for the final topic of this review, the Decolor Islands. This was basically Generation 5's version of the Orange Islands. But unlike the Orange Islands, the Decolor Islands doesn't really add much to further Ash's development. This would have been the perfect opportunity to squeeze in one last tournament arc that Ash could have actually won to redeem his Unova League loss, and even end the series on a high note. Unfortunately, the Decolor Islands was pretty much a filler arc used to buy time until X and Y started. Now I will give credit, it does have some nice moments like the return of Claire and Professor Oak, and even fun fillers like the Scout Shop tournament and the Behem episode. But on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, we also have completely terrible fillers like Honey Island and the Ash and Iris argument episode. The arc is only 20 episodes, so it's not that long to be honest, but it tremendously slows down the pacing of the series. It was honestly a drag to get through. It's a shame too, cause Black and White had some really good pacing, until we got to this arc. Yeah, not really the best way to end off a series. On top of that, when we reach the actual end of the series and it's time to send off Iris and Silent, it feels extremely rushed. Like, okay, Iris' reason to leave so that she can go train with Claire makes sense thanks to the episode that they gave her, but it still feels very last minute. And then there's Silent who leaves for a fishing competition. Like, what? That's so random. They could have honestly come up with a better and more meaningful way to set up their exit. Because of this, when it's time to leave, it doesn't feel nearly as emotional as other goodbyes we've seen in other series. The last thing that should be mentioned about this arc though is the transition to XY. Here we get the introduction of Alexa, and she's used to tease Generation 6 with her new never before seen Pokemon. This was awesome, not gonna lie. It felt like the old days of Johto and Hoenn, when we used to get teases and direct transitions into the next series. The final episode of Black and White is one of my absolute favorites because of this. It's all about Ash reflecting on his time in Unova and reigniting his dream to become a Pokemon Master. Almost like the writers themselves knew that this wasn't the best run for Ash. This was also the perfect setup for Ash's Kalos region journey. So you know what, although the Decolor Islands wasn't the best way to end off Black and White, it at least helped set up the next series. I'll give it that, but that's the only memorable part, to be honest. Alright, and that wraps up all the major topics of the Black and White anime. Now it's time for the final verdict, and after rewatching every single episode, what do I now think? Is Black and White really the bad and unwatchable anime we've been believing for years? Honestly, yeah, no, it's not. I know, it's crazy coming from me, but after rewatching it, I walked away enjoying Black and White a lot more than I used to. The biggest problem this series had is that it tried a bit too hard on the soft reboot aspect. Because of this, it has a lot of similarities to Kanto, and it's the reason why Ash has many dumb and forgettable moments. These moments really can get irritating, especially since before Black and White, the anime has been pretty consistent with Ash's experience. But honestly, that stuff is only a fraction of what this series has to offer. This series is so much more than people give credit. It's not just about Ash being a loser, Iris being annoying, and Silent being Brock 2.0. Once you look past that, you'll be able to enjoy other things like Ash's good battle moments, Iris' well-written Dragon Master moments, Silent's funny connoisseur moments, all of the Pokemon and their diverse personalities, all of the other bright and colorful characters that bring so much life to this series more than any other before it, and of course for the long-term fans, lots of great fanservice moments as well. I mean, we even got a successful Team Rocket arc because of this series, something we haven't really seen since the Lugia arc in Johto. If you know me, then you know that I hate Team Rocket, but ironically, this is one of the highlights of the series for me. So in conclusion, I do not think Black and White is a bad anime. I'll even go as far as to say that it's actually good. Man, does that feel weird to say. Although this series still isn't a personal favorite of mine, I can now see why many people love it, especially if this is where you started out. Now sure, maybe it wasn't the kind of series some of us were hoping for right after Diamond and Pearl, but that doesn't mean it can't be enjoyed. Maybe if we stop judging things so harshly for what they aren't, we'll be able to appreciate them more for what they actually are. And that's an important lesson this series taught me. Who would have thought? I still hate on Pheasant though. Huge shout out to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Now listen man, with many of us using the internet nowadays, there is nothing more important than protecting your online privacy. That's why NordVPN's got your back. A virtual private network basically encrypts your internet data, which keeps you safe from those malicious hackers out there. With their private servers, not only are you protecting yourself, but you can also web browse all over the world. This is actually really useful, cause let's say you live in a country outside of the US and you're trying to stay up to date with the English dub of Pokemon Journeys. Well, all you gotta do is pick the US server and boom, US Netflix with Pokemon Journeys. Same goes for any other show you wanna watch that isn't available in your country. So what are you waiting for? Get 68% off NordVPN now. That's only $371 a month. Plus, you get an additional 4 months free with nordvpn.com/Lumios or use promo code Lumios. Thanks everyone for watching my review of the Black and White anime, and special thanks to the Insane Game Freak and Ozzy Mitsu for joining me. They were an absolute huge help. Also, shout out to my buddy Spire and Silver Storm for some of the awesome covers you heard throughout the video. Last but not least, make sure to live your life to the fullest, and I'll see you next week for my review of the XY anime.